up with VM on camera, and it's not just me out this afternoon. Jamie has also headed out, and she's teamed up with Andrew this afternoon on camera. Her plans are to go and snoop around in an area where she was actually out on tracking team this morning trying to find a male leopard, possibly Tingana. So she's headed off there. We're here at the Nkuhuma waterhole, and it's actually where we finished the sunrise safari this morning. We were here kind of through default on our way back to camp, and the bird you saw in the water initially is called a saddle-billed stork. And that exact same bird, it's the female that we saw there, actually managed to capture a tilapia. It's a kind of fish that's about, well, this one was this big, so quite big for it to swallow, but it didn't get the opportunity to swallow it because an African fish eagle swooped down and it dropped the fish back into the water. So nobody got anything in the end, even though the fish eagle did try to steal it. It was an awesome, awesome sighting. And the fish eagle even let off its call as it flew off disappointedly. So we thought we'd start off here. Sadly, the female saddle-billed stork has moved off. The male's also up on the bank quite far from us. So they've obviously been making the most of quite easy fishing. Now that it is the dry season in winter, the waterhole's substantially dropped in its water level, creating a concentration of fish in the remaining puddle that's here, making it a lot easier for the fish hunting birds. And it's going to continue to become easier for them to hunt, especially if we continue to have hot days like this. It's 27 degrees Celsius, which is about 58 degrees, oh no, hang on, I think it's about 80 degrees Fahrenheit, but I will be corrected shortly if that is wrong. And we're going to continue now on this live safari. So nothing is planned or scripted. We go out with you guys as our eyes and ears as we drive along. So we need you to help us to find things, spot things, let us know how you're feeling, questions, comments. And to do that, it's very easy. You can hashtag Safari Live on Twitter or send an email through to questions@wildearth.tv. Nikki and Kirsty are in the final control room, so they are directing the show, and our plan is to head from here towards the last position of the Nkuhuma pride of lion. It's a pride of 8 lions that we found early this morning, actually before we even went live, and they moved off quite close to this waterhole actually and continued to cross the Mulwati drainage, this major drainage line that runs down from the waterhole. And we left them lying up in a shady area where I'm guessing we are going to find them again. Now, while we continue off to that last area where we left them, they're in all likelihood going to be sleeping, but it's important to just go and make sure. You can never be sure with our wild animals. So we're going to go and make sure they are there and fast asleep, and then make a decision as to whether to loop around or to stay with them. Anyway, the good news is while we are on our way there, Jamie's already found some animals for you. So over to Jamie, and we will see you a bit later.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Sunset Safari. For those of you who don't know, my name is Jamie, and this afternoon I have the aardvark on camera with me. And at the moment we are looking at a spectacular male kudu, who the aardvark tells me actually has a name and is known to some of the regular viewers. Apparently this is Zeus the kudu, and I can see why he's worth naming. Really spectacular set of horns, nice big mature kudu bull. Apparently he's quite often seen around this area. So getting to know more animals in my time on the Sabi Sands on Nkuhuma. And just to update you guys on my plans for this afternoon. So this morning, while you were with James and Scott following the Nkuhuma pride and looking at some Ellies, I was out tracking a male leopard, and I didn't have any luck, but I have returned to the area in the hope of finding out where his tracks disappeared off to. And for those of you who might have been watching the Nkuhuma cam, apparently at around 3 o'clock this morning there was a leopard at the waterhole, and I did know this because I followed his tracks down from Buffelshoek cut line all the way down to the Nkuhuma Dam, and then he moved off towards the power lines and our western boundary. So if any of you guys have any screenshots, I would love to know who this particular leopard is. Judging by the size of the tracks, it is a fairly big male, and I'm curious because I've yet to see one of the big male leopards on this reserve. So very, very exciting times ahead. And I'm sure that some of our regular viewers are wondering what's happening at the hyena den. We haven't seen much activity there for a little while. So this morning there was a report of one female lying at the den, but she got up and moved off. And we are starting to suspect that the hyenas may have moved their cubs to a different den site, possibly one that's already known. So we are going to both check the known den site and then the one that we think they might have moved to. And those horns are really, truly incredible on Zeus. Spread wide apart like that. You don't always see them structured in that way. He's got a very itchy ear. Okay. Goodbye, Zeus. It was very nice to meet you for the first time. And we've got a nice little herd of impala here as well. So guys, now that we have enjoyed that wonderful scene of a late afternoon lunch, and I have met Zeus for the very first time on my time in Nkuhuma, I think it's time to go and see if we can follow up on where that male has gone. And please remember that if you have got a screenshot or you do know the identity of this leopard, send it through at #SafariLive or email through at questions@wildearth.tv. But for now, we have a job to do. And there are definitely worse ways to spend your time. And for those of you who are very regular viewers and were watching over the last week or so, you may remember that Steph spent a good afternoon tracking a particular leopard and repeatedly saying, I know he's in this block, I know he's in this block. And he actually, when I was with Steph this morning, we were on our way to FC, we found the tracks, and he said to me almost immediately, it's the same one. He goes straight across Quarantine and onto Power Lines Road, start there, which is actually what ended up happening. So some very valuable advice from Steph, and exactly what we predicted did happen. So the tracks did come out onto Power Lines Road and then moved off to the west. So I'm sure, well, I'm hoping that he is still in that area somewhere. There is an interesting feel to the wind in the air at the moment. I think there might be a cold front on its way. There's definitely some clouds rolling in from the south of us. And they look surprisingly dense. We might even be seeing some unusual bits of rain over the next 2 days. So this afternoon's drive does have the potential to be very, very exciting. So we know that the Nkuhumas have been around. They are looking a little bit hungry. So there's a very good chance that they are going to be on the hunt as it starts to get cooler. And you never know, it might be pretty exciting stuff. We have an update from Lisa about the mysterious identity of our leopard who was at Jumacam, and unfortunately Lisa tells me that the camera was so out of focus that she thought the leopard was a giant rat. So unfortunately we may not have an ID on this particular individual unless I can find him now. And then there are reports of elephants at Arathusa Dam. I am thinking about heading in that direction just to get an update from the other guides about what is happening on that side of things. But I do just want to follow up on these leopard tracks first and see what I can find. So thank you guys for all of those updates. It is very useful to know. Look at that track. Sorry guys. So it was a very old track, but possibly one of the biggest hyena tracks I've ever seen in my life. Sorry Andrew, I'll reposition so that they can have a look. I have noticed there are some very, very big hyena on the Sabi Sands. I have seen some giant tracks here. The track I'm looking at, if I can just hop out for a moment, I will show you. Oh, sorry. So the track I was looking at, it's not fresh, so it is hard to see. But it is this one here, and it is a hyena. I can, even though it's not that fresh, I can tell by the shape of the toes, but it is roughly the size of my hand. So I don't have the biggest hands, but they are usually bigger than hyena tracks. And this one, it is in soft sand, so it will have expanded slightly, but it is absolutely enormous. So almost certainly a female. Very cool to see. I think that is probably the biggest hyena track I have ever seen in my life. So impressive stuff from the Juma hyenas. And I think, unfortunately, it might just be a little too windy for this particular hat. and I would hate to lose Nikki's hat since she has entrusted me with its care. So we'll be putting that on the seat for now. So guys, I'm sure that you've all been wondering what's happening with Scott and what he's been up to and how his luck is going with the lions. So he has returned to where they were this morning, but they are no longer there. But I will leave him to fill you in on what exactly is going on.
Welcome back, everyone. And just like I said earlier, nature always surprises you, and the lion are not where we left them, as I expected to find them sleeping in exactly the same place. That sadly has not happened. I did see one track heading further east, which was their general direction of movement this morning. But what I'm going to do is just make sure that they haven't moved a short distance and are lying nearby in the shade. As the sun moves from east to west, so will the lions have to reposition and find shade accordingly. But I'm fairly confident the one track I did see heading east would have been fresh, and that means we've got our work cut out for ourselves now, because it's a very thick area and it's going to be a tricky job finding them. What I'm probably going to do is have to spend some time on foot from this last area following the tracks. I really don't think they would have moved far, but then again, I earlier thought they wouldn't have moved at all. Happy to hear that you saw beautiful big male kudu. Haven't seen that individual for quite some time with that incredibly wide spread of horns. So just to let you know exactly where the lion were, they were lying under the green bushes to our right-hand side this morning. And it was quite warm, and it has been quite warm throughout the day. But the beauty of being out here, like I've said before, is that the animals always keep us guessing, and this afternoon is no different. What may have happened is some potential prey may have moved through this area, and the lions may have attempted to catch them, so that's one possible scenario that would have played out while we've been gone, hence causing them to move, which I didn't expect them to do. I'm just checking the ground here very carefully for any sign of more tracks, but no luck. So, the other tricky thing about this area we're in is that the next road isn't too far, but it's through incredibly thick bush, which you can see up ahead of us. So I'm inclined to maybe loop around to the next road, just to make sure they haven't already crossed further east of this position. And if I don't find any of their tracks on that next road, Bataleur Road, what we will do is then walk in on foot. And when you are on foot, you're that much more tuned into nature, and your hearing's better, you really heighten your senses, and that can help in tracking down animals. Just in a dark figure I would like to double check. No, that's just a fallen down stump that I thought may have been a buffalo or potential prey animal for the lion that they could have been stalking. What I'm probably going to do is actually do a very short walk here just to try and establish their general direction of movements, and then once I've established that, then we would rather loop ahead. So it would be silly for me to just assume they've continued east, so it's better for me to just get out now, double check that they have moved off in the same direction they were moving this morning. And while I do that, we're going to send you back to Jamie, so hopefully next time you see us we'll have some lion for you.
Welcome back, guys, and while Spot is looking for those difficult Nkuhumas, you have rejoined me on my search for the leopard, and I'm still waiting to... oh. Hello. Sorry for the abrupt stop there. Well, I found leopard tracks, and they do look rather fresh, up and down. But they don't look to me like the male that I was tracking before. They look more like a female has come along the road. So I just want to double check which set is on top of the other, because they are pacing up and down. So I just want to have a quick look, and it looks to me as though the ones going this way are fresher than the ones going that way. So I just want to see if I can follow up and figure out which way they've gone. Now this is definitely not the male I was tracking. The tracks are much, much smaller. So I'm very curious to see who this is. Now we are not too far from where Sindile was last seen, so there's always a chance. But I just want to make sure I've got the right direction before we go shooting off the wrong way. Sure. Interesting. Okay, excuse me for 1 second, guys. I'm just going to hop off and see which way these tracks are going, because there are 2 sets and potentially 2 leopards here. So, this tiny one here is a female for sure. And then I think this is just her slightly bigger front foot. There you go. And these are very, very fresh. The lines are beautifully crisp on the tracks, up and down, and I'm sure that my guess would be that this is Shadow and Sindile, but I'm obviously not 100% sure. It's impossible to tell with leopard tracks with 100% certainty, but I do have a suspicion that this is who we're looking for, which is good news for us, and there might be hope for our leopard search. So I still think that the tracks are going back the way that I've just come from. So they must have gone off the road fairly soon, because I've only just picked up on them. Okay, so let us see if we can try and figure out which way these leopards have gone. increased temperatures are definitely bringing back the flies. So where did these tracks come from? Just while we are talking about the subject of tracking, or at least actually doing the physical tracking, Dennis would like to know if we have brown or striped hyena on this reserve, and how you might tell the difference between striped and brown hyena tracks compared to spotted hyena tracks. So hi Dennis, thanks very much for that question. And the answer is, to striped hyena, no. We don't. They're generally found further north into sort of North Africa and around that area, and they do fill a very similar niche to the hyena that we have here. And then we have the brown hyena, which we do find on this reserve. I haven't seen one yet, but I know that some of the regular viewers might have seen one a couple of weeks ago. And it's always very, very exciting when you do see brown hyena, because they are slightly different to their spotted cousins. They are a little bit more shy. They're not as sociable, so they don't live in big clans, and they do rely on sort of smaller prey species and have different denning areas, more in rocky areas if they can get there. Sorry, I just thought I heard something, but I might have been imagining it. No, just a woodpecker. Thought it might be an alarm call for a leopard hanging around. So in terms of their tracks, so brown hyena, you can tell fairly easily from spotted hyena. So the tracks look very, very similar, but the back foot of the brown hyena is almost half the size of the front foot. So in spotted hyena, the back track is slightly smaller, but with the brown hyena, that back track is noticeably smaller. And if you are lucky and you see the tracks in soft sand or in fresh mud, you'll also see sort of thin lines around the track, and that's the hair of the brown hyena coming through around the paw, because they are slightly shaggier than the spotted hyena. And what I'm going to do now is just see if I can find a nice picture to show any of the new viewers what sort of differences there are between the different species. So if you just bear with me a moment. And I've had the opportunity in the past to work on a reserve that did not have lions or spotted hyenas in any great number. And it was actually amazing then in that situation to hear brown hyenas, because they tend not to be nearly as vocal as their spotted cousins. So this is the brown hyena here. So you can see it's a slightly smaller build than the spotted hyena, and very, very shaggy. It almost looks like a collie dog in terms of the shagginess of the silhouette. And then you've got the spotted hyena, which is much bigger and is capable of taking down much bigger prey in terms of its hunting abilities. And then just above that we have an aardwolf, which I would be very, very excited to see. I haven't seen one in a long time. They are a lot more shy, and they are basically entirely insectivorous. So an unusual member of the hyena family, much, much smaller, and that feeds only on insects. So great question about the differences between spotted and brown hyena. As I said, we don't have striped hyena in this area. But brown I would love to see, and I would be very excited to see, just because it is a little bit unusual. And as I was saying about the brown hyena calling, it's a very strange sound. It almost sounds like people talking in the distance or having a party. I can't really fully describe it, but a very interesting call, and one that you very seldom hear in areas with spotted hyena and lions, because then the brown hyena become much more secretive. However, this is distracting from our leopard tracking time. And those tracks were fairly fresh, I would say, probably from sometime early this morning, which is also interesting because it means that they were in very close to where I last saw those male leopard tracks, which were also from sometime very early this morning. So I'm not picking up anything here. I only have hyena tracks on this side, and I can also see my shoe prints from this morning from where I was tracking. So the tracks didn't reach all the way here, so we must go back and see where they've gone off the road. And if you guys will excuse me for one moment, I'm just going to respond to James, who is calling me on the radio. James, standing by. Yes, that's affirmative. I'm just on very close to the junction of Impala Plains Road and Power Lines Road, and I've picked up Mufuzzi and potentially Sindile's tracks around this area. They're up and down on this road, so I think maybe if you can check around Zoe's road, maybe if they came out on the block there, but I don't think so. I think they're somewhere fairly close to this junction. Sorry guys, just coordinating for a little bit of extra help here. James, I know that Scott is also tracking for the Nkuhuma Pride, so I'm not sure if he wants help on that side. That's affirmative. So I just came back to this area to double check for where these tracks have gone off. So I know Scott is still wandering around checking for the Nkuhumas, and I'm almost certain that Sindile is probably somewhere in this block here. And what I've noticed about his behavior is that he seems to really, really love termite mounds, which makes sense because it gives him a slightly elevated position and he can survey the area and keep an eye out for any potential threats. And now we know, having seen him with his first dwarf mongoose kill, or the first that we've seen, he can also keep an eye out for potential prey. So I'm looking around the tops of termite mounds and on the tops of logs just to see where he might be. I just want to circle the block quickly. It's not an enormous block. So you guys might have noticed that I have a beautifully duct-taped ear, which I know Cecilia is simply loving. So hi Cecilia, great to have you on the back of the vehicle with us. Just to explain what's going on, the earpiece doesn't want to stay in my ear, and the closest thing to hand was some black tape, and I can assure you I'm enjoying it every time I have to jump off the vehicle and go and see what the tracks are doing, because I'm pretty sure I lose half my hair on that side of my head every time I do. So an interesting experience, and the earpiece just simply doesn't approve of the shape of my ear and doesn't want to stay there. So a simple solution, and one that I feel has the potential to become quite the fashion accessory. I hear black is very flattering. So now, little leopard, where are you hiding? So guys, I think that I need to jump out on foot, so to really properly follow up on these tracks. So in the meantime, Scott has got a nice lone elephant to show you, and I will be back to update you a little bit later.
Welcome back everyone, and one of the joys of being off on foot is that, like I said, your senses really heighten, and we could actually hear these elephant feeding from where I was looking for the lion, and we decided to come and have a closer look. I actually didn't see them on foot. It wouldn't have been wise to approach elephant on foot, and slowly I'm beginning to see that there are more than one. And I must reiterate what I've just said. It's not wise to approach breeding herds of elephants with mothers and calves, as the mothers are very protective of their calves and can be quite aggressive to humans on foot. So you should tend to avoid them where possible. The big old bulls, or elephant bulls in general, are far better to approach on foot because they lack the protective nature and calves that the female elephants can be very, very protective over. What I did establish while I was on foot, that the lions did in fact continue east in the direction they have been heading in this morning, and I'm hoping it won't be too long before we find them. But thankfully we are in no major rush. Interestingly, this elephant cow is one that we know. The reason why she's easy to tell apart from others is, look at that trunk of hers. It's slightly shorter than normal, and if she points it towards us again, we'll notice that they're like two barrels of a shotgun. They lack the prehensile fingertip that you would see usually on an elephant, and sadly she probably lost the end of her trunk to a snare, which is a wire noose used by poachers to trap prey. The good news is that she's joined up with another herd. There's not just the three of them. They often do travel. It's just her and two of her offspring. And a few months ago, this young boy that's coming up to his mother now kept squealing in disgust as his mother would disallow him the opportunity to drink. And he would throw little temper tantrums, but he seems to have been taught his lesson now, and he's big enough to feed solely on grass and vegetation. Afternoon, Lex, go ahead. Just Thump and Glove on central east of Nyala Road. The Nkuhumas have moved east from their last position, and once I'm finished with these Ellies, I'll continue trying to find them. So Lex is just getting out, another guide, and important for us to update everyone on what's going on as they head out, and he can then plan his routes and decide where he would like to go. Now, I don't have a monitor, which means I may not know exactly what you're seeing, but I've got complete faith in VM behind the camera, and I'm sure you're all enjoying some great views of these elephants. It just makes the narrating a little bit difficult. It's cooled down quite nicely. There's a breeze, quite a strong breeze, and the cloud covers helping to keep us cool. When the sun's out, it does get surprisingly warm, even though it is winter. What I'm going to try and do is loop ahead of these elephants and allow them the opportunity to continue feeding towards us. And if we give them the decision or the option to come towards us or either veer away from us, it's a far safer way and better way of getting good visuals of them. It's a bit of a gamble because you never know if they will continue, but at least you're giving them that option and not intruding on their space. We're going to get some great views here because she's eye level with us, and it really does make a big difference when all of the animals are being shot at from a lower angle than normal. We can't see as much of her face as we would like to, but that is characteristic of the winter months. The elephants are forced to delve deeper into bushes to pluck out harder to reach vegetation that has yet to be fed on. And you often actually see them displacing fallen down logs in order to get to these little hidden morsels. Should I reverse it a little bit, Liam? Not going to help too much.
I think so.
Just going to be patient here, and the great thing about being stationary, especially when you're looking at wonderful animals like this, is that it does allow you to listen to the surrounding bush and get other intelligence of what may be going on. And for those of you who may have just joined, the Nkuhuma pride are not sleeping where they were supposed to be, where we left them this morning, and I was confident that we would find them there fast asleep. And I'm quite actually happy that they have moved, because that means maybe we'll get them on the move earlier on than expected this afternoon. The reasons why they may have moved are endless. It could have been because of a potential prey item that exposed itself nearby, or simply alarm calls, or a kill made by another animal that they rushed off to try and steal. Now, I mentioned it briefly earlier, but this cow that we can see, she very often moves around with just two of her offspring. And I'm guessing it's soon to be a third. She does look heavily pregnant, and if we watch her stomach now, it's as if we can actually almost see the baby moving in there. Look at this. Her body's hardly moving. And the fact that we can see so much movement in that stomach means it could be a little baby kicking around. And it is interesting that she does move on her own. And it's great that Ashley sent through a question asking about elephants and how they, and will they actually join herds and leave herds? Will other elephants be accepted into herds? And yes, they certainly will. Herds will sometimes join up and move together and then split up, but usually they are long-term family relationships that over many years herds will grow. The daughters will stay in their natal herd and the young bulls will move off. And depending how successful the cows within a herd are will obviously depend on how much that herd grows. And it quite often is a lot of brothers and cousins and sisters that are moving together. But at the drier times of the year, you do find elephants congregating and moving together in search of food and water, and they are very tolerant of one another. So good question, Ashley, and I guess this is a good example of elephants joining herds and leaving herds. The fact that we can see these three with a few other elephants means that they certainly are welcoming two other elephants. Well, a young bull seems to be swaggering up to us with a little bit of attitude, so it's going to be interesting to see how far he'll come. There's a few bushes between us which will make him feel brave. If there was nothing between us, he would be less bold. Or maybe it's just the food that he's after. We are so incredibly fortunate to be able to view animals at such close proximity, especially animals like elephants who have had a lot of negative interactions with humans over the years, and their behavior, or this behavior that you're witnessing right now, is certainly not throughout Africa. You get elephants in some parts of Africa that will see humans and either head for the hills or come charging in aggressively. So it's important to note that the elephants understand that they are safe here and will very seldom cause any trouble with us, which we're very grateful for, because they are big and dangerous animals, and if they don't like us, it can be a fairly terrifying encounter to be exposed to. Now, one thing with elephants, whenever we see them, they are feeding. You very seldom see them sleeping or not moving, and they spend the majority of their day on all four legs, and not only that, most of the time actually feeding. And Virginia would like to know, does all the time that they spend on their feet cause them arthritis? And I don't think so, Virginia. They've evolved over many years to the animals that they are today, and their body is designed to be able to withstand standing for many, many hours a day. And if they do need to lie down, they certainly can. But I haven't been aware or seen any old elephants hobbling around. So I don't think that is the case, and it wouldn't make sense in terms of evolution for them to not be able to withstand the lifestyle that they lead. And it is also important to remember that being on all four legs is something that we don't really think about very often, but if we were to stand on all four legs, it displaces the weight of your body quite evenly, and a lot of the four-legged animals can actually sleep while standing up. So it's something, I guess, that's hard for us to grasp because our anatomy is so different. But I don't think we have to worry about them getting arthritis. Now, it's interesting how we have been viewing these elephants, at least for the last 3 or 4 months, on and off. And you could therefore assume that they could possibly be territorial. But to answer Craig's question from Texas, they certainly aren't territorial, Craig, and they are nomadic, like you suggested. They can move hundreds and thousands of kilometers provided they've got the opportunity to and there's not humans in the way, and they did for many years before the humans overpopulated the planet, move from country to country, thousands of kilometers on elephant migration paths. Sadly, they are no longer afforded that huge expansive range that they could traverse many years ago. But in the Kruger National Park, where they've got hundreds of kilometers to move into Mozambique and Zimbabwe, they certainly do use that opportunity, and they are free-ranging. They will go wherever the food takes them. But obviously, this cow and her two youngsters are content here, and there's enough food around. We've just got a very interesting observation sent through, and that's from Judith in North Carolina. And she's pointed out that the only parts of the elephants that's not wrinkly is their ears. And that is a good observation. You're entirely correct. I guess there's a few very small parts of their forehead that may not be too wrinkly, but it is certainly the smoothest parts of their body. And interestingly enough, Judith, their ears make up 20% of the surface area of their body, which is a figure that's quite hard to comprehend. But when you think about it, I guess they're double-sided, and oh, I just swallowed a fly. Excuse me. There's also that extra flap that hangs down over the top, not adding a lot to the elephant's surface area, but it does make up 20% of their body, and it's also a hugely important tool for keeping them cool, and that's why they've adapted into such big ears. It's not for hearing. They're not cupped forward like a satellite like our ears to help pick up and absorb sounds coming towards you, but it's purely to keep cool. And as they flap their ears, you may get a brief glimpse of a large network of arteries and veins, and these arteries and veins pump liters and liters of blood through them every minute, thus cooling down the elephants. Liam's panned across now to the big cow. She just ripped out a long branch that she's busy chewing on. There we go. And again, quite a common sight to see in the winter months, elephants chewing the bark. It's a thin cambium layer that surrounds the dead lignified inner of the tree, or branches, or tree trunks, depending on the size of the branch they've broken. And just like the ears of the elephants are used to cool down the elephants, the bark, the thin cambium layer of the bark of trees, is used to transport nutrients and minerals and water up to the leaves and down to the roots, depending. We can't see any other animals around these elephants now, but Gracie, one of our young viewers, would like to know whether elephants will enjoy spending time around other big animals, because they're also big. And they actually don't mind, Gracie. They will sometimes spend time with smaller antelope, bigger animals. They're quite friendly. Unless there's not much water around, they sometimes can be bullies around a water hole and chase other animals away. But usually they are such friendly animals that most of the other animals that eat grass and leaves will not mind being around them, and they usually also don't mind having other animals of any size around. But I guess if there were more giraffe around here, we would possibly see them together more often. But it's just that we don't have too many giraffe, especially now that we haven't seen some for quite some time. But hopefully we'll find some with the elephant for you soon, Gracie. What you won't have to wait for, though, is a surprise that Jamie has already found for you guys. It's something really awesome, and I wish I could be joining you and going across to Jamie now. But we're going to continue and look for the lions. Enjoy what she's found.
So guys, earlier on we were having a little bit of a chat about tracking and what I've learned about Sindile's behavior and just the general amazing facts about leopard camouflage. So I have something special to show you, and just to give you a rough idea, I am maybe 50 meters from when I last spoke to you. And if we just have a look across and onto that termite mound, we do have a special surprise. And tucked away on the left of that tree, you will just see him. He just moved slightly out of our reach, so I will reposition in a moment. But there you can see little Sindile waiting around on his favorite place, a termite mound. So I am going to reposition us now. Unfortunately, he did shift a little bit as I came in, so I'll move around. We do have other vehicles who will be coming into the sighting, so I'll have to just negotiate my way around that. But I just wanted to show you this guy from this position, just because it is so interesting the way that they can disappear, and also how you can follow patterns of behavior. So when I saw him first, I was exactly where this tree is right now, and he was flat down looking at me. So I immediately did what you should always do and just averted my eyes, pretend I couldn't see him, and just looped around back to the car a different route. So let us see if we can move around slightly. Hi guys. I just have to be a little bit careful as I go out, because I did notice quite a big hole as I was coming in, and I'd prefer not to spend the rest of the afternoon stuck in that instead of watching Sindile. Right, now, which way are we going to go in? I think we're going to go around. So, an exciting moment for me. My first leopard tracked properly from start to finish on the Sabi Sands. So I'm fairly chuffed with the way this afternoon is going. Andrew and I did have a good feeling about it, so it has proved to be correct. And I'm just going to shift around so that we can see. Now, I don't want to push too close to him. There are other vehicles coming through, and he does appear to be chomping something. I think it might just be grass. Just feeling a little bit playful. And it's always good sightings etiquette just to never have more than one vehicle repositioning at one time. So just to give you a little bit of an update on Sindile's position, especially because it is fairly interesting to me, having been spending the day tracking various leopard movements. So we are on the junction of Impala Plains and power lines. So we are not very far. We're probably about 100 meters from where I lost the tracks of that male leopard that was picked up on the Djuma cam at about 3 o'clock this morning, and that moved through the area. And I am, as I said, 50 meters into the block from where I first spotted those tracks. So I did think that they were very, very fresh. But obviously they were, I was right about that. They were very, very fresh, fresher than I expected. And what I would like to do now, one of the other guides who's just come through the sighting has been passing on some kind of signal to me. I'm not quite sure what he was telling me. He was frantically gesticulating with his hands. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if he is telling me that potentially Shadow might be around, or there is a kill. He was sort of making eating motions with his hand, so I think it might be that. So I'm just going to shift around and see what he was talking about. Might be a little bit of window bashing needed. Yes, there we go. He was telling me that there is another leopard in the area. She appears to be feeding on something.
Where?
She is to the left, just where there's a fallen tree there. You might struggle to get in. There we go. There you can just see the spots of, I assume, Shadow feeding underneath there. So I have just seen her, so I would like to reposition in a moment. But she's definitely got a kill there. She's definitely eating. And he has obviously had his fill for the moment. Ooh, and something's gone up his nose. Ooh. Now that could also be, if you have domestic house cats, you might have seen them cough up fur balls. And leopards might do something similar when they've swallowed too much hair, and they just form a bit of a bolus in their stomach and then cough that up. And he's obviously not feeling too well, because he's eating some grass. Definitely feeling a little bit under the weather. Might have eaten too fast or something that disagrees with him. And I have some very big congratulations to Jane in Colorado, who called it perfectly. So she noticed that Sindile was panting quite heavily when we first arrived, which is something that I noticed, and she said it was a good sign that maybe he'd eaten recently. Well, you were spot on, he has indeed, and Shadow is still feeding, and I'd like to get us a good visual of that. So I just want to get Sindile eating a little bit of more grass, and then I'm going to reposition my vehicle. You might have to bear with me for a moment, as I am in a tricky corner and there is a rather inconveniently placed knobthorn between me and where I want to go, and I definitely don't want to move too close to Sindile and disturb him in any way, so I might have to go out and around. And I can actually hear Shadow crunching on some bones off to my right where she's tucked away under the tree. He's looking very, very full. And there you can see that panting that was picked up on earlier. And there's something interesting on that tree. So he might be full, but it's not full enough to stop him from investigating the world around him. Having a serious exploration of the world around him and the smells around him. If he continues his direction of movement, we might struggle to loop around, just because I don't want to make him feel unsettled or insecure. Especially around the kill. Okay, so he's moved off nicely, and I am going to reposition. Just bear with me. We're going to have to move away from them for a moment, and then I'm going to loop round so that we can have a look at what it is that Shadow has caught and is devouring, tucked away under the bushes over there. Okay, so let's see what we can see. Sindile is still eating grass, so he may well be feeling a little bit under the weather. So we're just going to make our way round. Unfortunately, I can't go straight, so I'm going to have to loop out. Let me see if I can get around straight. Might take a bit of maneuvering. As a nice opportunity, sorry Andrew, to show you where the road is. The road is there. That is how close we were from where we saw the tracks. And considering I drove past this place 3 times, it's quite impressive how well tucked away these guys are. She really is very well tucked away. Andrew, if you can give me a shout, because the tree might be slightly in my way. Maybe a little bit further. Thank you. So guys, we can't get right in there, and as I said, she is very well tucked away. And I can't see what she's eating. I'm just going to grab my binoculars here. But there you can see Shadow tucking into whatever she's caught. So isn't that incredible? And whenever I find something like this, it always makes me wonder just how many leopards I've been driving past over the last few years spent in the bush. and I'm sure that number is very, very high. And definitely will have walked past a couple in my time as well. It doesn't look like a very big kill. They've clearly finished off most of it, and Shadow, as a good mother, has allowed Sindile probably most of it before she started feeding herself. And Sindile, although you guys might not be able to see him, I think he's making his way back towards his mother. He's just off to the left of her, coming down along the termite mound, but I think your view will be obscured for now by this big silver cluster leaf branch. And he's disappeared again. Still wandering around, possibly looking for something to make his stomach feel a little bit better. You can actually hear her crunching on the bones. And I can also smell the stomach contents. So it's a very different smell to the kill itself, which doesn't have a very strong smell for a fresh, because it is a fresh kill. But the stomach contents do have a very distinctive, rather grassy smell. And generally what leopards will do is they will get rid of the stomach contents and then drag the kill a little way away before they start to feed, just so that if anything is attracted to the smell, something like a hyena, then they don't immediately find the leopard with the kill. So I think that it is possible that she started feeding immediately and didn't actually move the stomach contents too far away, because I can't see them, but I can definitely smell them. So we do have two leopards that are looking fairly well fed, and as I said, Shadow may have given quite a bit over to Sindile, or allowed him to feed more than she has fed herself, just judging by his rather full stomach. And Anita from New York was wondering how long it will be before Sindile has to eat again, or until he eats again. How's it? Hello Anita, and welcome to the Sunset Safari. I'm so glad we are able to share this with you. And that's a question that very much depends on how the next few days pan out. So he is very, very full, and he won't necessarily need to eat again in the next three or so days. But that being said, if his mother does catch a meal, then he will eat, even if it is tomorrow, especially because I think this kill was a fairly small one. However, it could be that Shadow doesn't actually catch anything for the next couple of days, so up to a week, and then he will be very hungry, but he definitely won't starve. He will survive. He has got a nice full belly to fall back on. So it really just depends on how often Shadow manages to actually make some kind of a kill. They are opportunistic leopards, and they can't afford to turn down the opportunity for some good food. Although, as we saw with Sindile a couple of days ago with his dwarf mongoose kill that he'd obviously made all on his own and was very proud of himself, he wasn't terribly interested in eating that. He did have a nice full belly, so they will reject food on occasion, but generally it will be determined by whenever Shadow makes a good sizable kill. So I mentioned earlier that I thought that Shadow had potentially let Sindile have a little bit of the, or have most of this kill. And Joan in England would like to know, would she not have eaten first before going to fetch Sindile? So would she not have eaten a little bit of her own kill before she moved on to go and fetch Sindile? And that is a very good question, and I think potentially she might have. It does depend on how hungry she was, but there is a chance that she might have nibbled on it before going to fetch him. However, the fact that she's still eating suggests maybe not. And here comes Sindile just to have a look at what's going on around him. He's just popped down, and there you can see how easily he disappears into the grass. So we do have some other vehicles moving in. And if you guys will excuse me, I just want to double check and see how many other stations are coming to join us. Hello, how are you?
Hello, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Just sneaking there?
Yeah, I was just walking.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Are there other people coming as well?
Not that I know. Tex can just get mobile, and then Craig can only come in when I'm out. So.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, for any new viewers, there are restrictions as to how many vehicles can be on a sighting, and that is very important both for the animals' well-being and for the guest experience that they have. So we're restricted to a maximum of 3 vehicles at the sighting. So I was just double checking to see if anybody was coming to join us, because there are now 3 of us around these leopards, and we certainly don't want to have any more than that, just to avoid disturbing them in any way. But as you can see, they are not bothered at all, and they are perfectly comfortable with our presence. And there we can see Shadow is still eating away. I think that's Shadow. Yes, it is. And Charlie on Twitter would like to know if anybody knows what it is that they have killed and what they are now feeding on. Hello, Charlie. Welcome to the Sunset Safari. And I have to be honest, I don't know the answer to that. I suspect that it is something fairly small, just because I can't see any of the remnants. So possibly one of the small antelopes, something like a steenbok or a duiker. But I haven't been able to see clearly through the grass. And I am just guessing at the fact that it's small, partly because there doesn't seem to be much of the kill left, and also because she hasn't bothered to drag it too far from wherever she killed it, which I suspect is very close to here. So I think it is a small kill. I know that we can see a little bit of a flash of white. However, that could potentially be any one of the little antelopes. So not too sure just yet. I will let you know if I catch a glimpse of a leg or something that might give it away. And she did just hiss for a moment there, and I think it might have been in response to Sindile, but I didn't actually see it that clearly. Just caught it out of the corner of my eye. So you guys will have heard me referring to this female that we can see at the moment as Shadow, and the cub that we were seeing as Sindile. And Joyce would like to know a little bit more about how they are named. And Sindile is a little bit too young to be given official names, but the older animals are given names by the various guides, who start to pick up on a little bit of their personalities and then match them to a name that they find suitable. So as far as I understand, with Shadow, it was because she was quite difficult to find at times and often disappeared very quickly, as leopards often do, and hence was given the name Shadow. However, Sindile was a name that was picked out by the WildEarth viewers, and that I believe means something along the lines of a survivor, just because I know that Shadow has struggled with raising cubs in the past, and this is great to see her finally raise a cub that's reached almost a year of age. And I know that Sindile is too young to be named officially by the reserve, and there is a distinct possibility that they could choose a different name for him, so we must prepare ourselves for that. But it's nice to just be able to put a name to such a character of a leopard, and one that we see so nice and regularly. Here we go, we might be able to see what she's got now. She's just shifted it slightly. And if she does stay in the same place, then I will try and move around slightly so we can get a different angle and maybe a slightly better one. I still can't see very much of whatever that is, and which sort of is a bit of an affirmation that it is a small kill and nothing too large. So what I am going to do now is just hopefully, I'm hoping that we might have a slightly clearer view just ahead now that she has shifted slightly underneath that tree. So I'm just going to see, it might work, it might not. It looks to be fairly clear. So I'm just going to try and move for you guys. Is that good? Okay, we're just going to work together to get this angle a little bit better for you all. She has tucked herself away nicely underneath the bush there, which is a good thing for her. It will help to keep her safe, but it does make life a little bit more difficult for us. And just in case you're wondering where Sindile is, you will not be able to see him, but I can from my position. He's just off to the left of where Shadow is lying, just tucked away behind some grass. And when I do move forward, I will potentially be able to show you. So for those of you who might be joining us for the very first time, this is a live safari. So we are sitting right now watching a female leopard and her year-old cub enjoy a meal. So isn't that amazing? And if you guys do have any questions about it, feel free to send it through at #SafariLive on Twitter, and or else email through to questions@wildearth.tv. So guys, there you can see Sindile is tucked away. You can barely see the spots behind the grass. Just a little bit of movement that can catch your eye and show you that there is a little leopard cub hiding behind there. But while I try and get a slightly better position, I'm going to send you back to Scott, but never fear, we will still be here with the leopards when you get back to us a little bit later.
Well, isn't it wonderful that Jamie managed to find not only Sindile, but also Shadow with a kill? Very well done to her, and a bit of hard work and time spent on foot has paid off for her, which is great. It hasn't only paid off for her, it's also paid off for us, and I got lucky and bumped into them on foot, and we just got into position here. It was quite hard to negotiate into this thick area with the vehicle, and they have been moving ever so slightly. It doesn't look like that now, but they have been moving up and down, and even though they're fast asleep right now, they could very well get up and keep moving. It's not uncommon for lions to slowly wake up in the afternoon, just as we would. Just need to help call Texan into the sighting, and he is nearby. Tex, are you on Battle? I think I may have your audio. Okay, copy. If you just head north into the block from where you are there, sitting around, there's a few dead knobthorn trees that you can see to the north of you. There's 2 of them, or 2 or 3. I'm just next to those. And isn't it wonderful now how you can actually see how much bigger Junior, the young male, is to the rest of the lioness within this pride, even though he's younger than a lot of them. And the scary thing is he will continue to grow. He's not even nearly fully grown yet. I was saying this morning, I really do hope that he does continue to spend time in the Sabi Sands when he heads off to find his own territory, because it would be wonderful to watch and see him develop into a big male. I do fear, though, that I think it's unlikely that he is going to be hanging around in these parts. I've got a feeling he's going to head further north from here. Don't ask me why, but those are just my thoughts. And I guess time will tell, and we will have to just wait and see. And talking about Junior and him moving off, it's important to know that it's probably going to happen soon. And Dors from, I think it's Philadelphia, says he was watching this morning, and once in Pittsburgh, sorry, and he would like to know when will his mothers actually decide to chase him off. And they will never chase him off. It will be entirely up to the fathers of this pride, or another coalition of males that could come in and chase away his fathers, and then he will naturally follow suit and not even run the risk of getting caught up by big males. Big dominant males could kill him if they got a hold of him, but it's not a responsibility of the mothers, it's the father's job to get him out of here. And It's interesting that they haven't chased him off already. There has been kind of murmurings of him moving away from the pride, and I know one sighting a few weeks ago, probably a month and a half ago now, he actually did move away from the whole pride on his own when both fathers, or both of the Matimba males, rejoined with the Nkuhuma pride. Subsequently, since then, they have been joining up with the pride every now and then, from what we've heard, and he's been tolerated. So it's kind of up and down and backwards and forwards for now, but the straw is gonna, well, the final straw will break and he will eventually get chased out for good. And it's important that this happens for the simple reason that at least that way he will go and spread his genes elsewhere. As if he was to mate with his mothers and sisters, that wouldn't be sustainable, and we'd have some very funny lion walking around here. And we've got another observation through, and it's so great when you do send through your observations, so please keep them coming through. This one's from Mavis, and she's noticed that they're still looking quite hungry. And you're right, except for Junior, I think he got the most of their last meal. They could have caught something small like an impala last night, and he would have just stolen the whole thing almost to himself. And that's why his belly looks more full than any of the other lion. But it certainly is good prospects for later on this afternoon. They could hopefully get up earlier than normal in search of prey. Speaking of which, Shadow and Sindile are no longer in search of any prey because they've already got some, and it sounds like Shadow's busy feeding. Enjoy. I wish I was coming with you, and we'll see you later.
So guys, from hungry looking Nkuhuma lions to two very satisfied leopards, here we have Sindile. He is still on the move, and judging by the way that he is consuming grass at the moment, he definitely something didn't agree with him in whatever meal that he ate. So I do think he's not feeling too good. Maybe he was very, very hungry when the food first arrived and he simply bolted something down that's feeling a bit uncomfortable now. Much the way a teenage boy might attack a meal. So, hungry growing leopard, and he is getting bigger every time I see him. And for those of you who were wondering what the kill was, I had a bit of a closer look as I shifted around, and Shadow has stood up and we can see quite clearly what it is. So I'm just going to duck my head out of the way so you can have a look. And she is definitely holding half a steenbok, half a little male steenbok. So unfortunate for him, but still a good meal for these two. And we were correct about the size of the kill. It is just a little antelope. Oh, there was a bit of a burp from... Oh, she's actually contact calling to Sindile. She's just making sure he doesn't go too far from her. And he has responded almost instantly to her call. So the minute she called, he pricked up his ears and started moving just to see whatever it is that Mom wanted. So, instant reaction that has ensured his survival. So he knows that Mom's called. He just hasn't quite determined why. He is approaching cautiously just to see what it was that Mom wanted. And this is my first time really seeing Shadow properly. She is stunning. And I'm not sure what she was telling him, but she appears to be done with her steenbok for now. And now she's going to is potentially going to make his way back and see what else he can finish off now that his mother is done with her meal. And it was interesting the way that Shadow picked up that steenbok and then moved it slightly out of the way. I think she was just tucking it a little bit further away, trying to hide it a little bit better. Now I know that Shadow has a bit of a reputation. Oh, he's still trying to get it. She does have a bit of a reputation for not hoisting her kills into trees to keep them safe. I will say that in her defense at this moment, there's not very much left of that kill, and it would be rather difficult to balance such a small thing up in the fork of a tree somewhere safely. So she's just tucked it away to hide it for now. But Sindile has decided he wants to go. There we go. A little bit of a gruesome image there, but two very happy and contented leopards. Off he goes. He's decided he wants to take it somewhere different to eat it. He does look very, very proud of himself there. And there's something about the way that leopards move when they move their kills. He looks very similar to the way that he did when he moved his dwarf mongoose kill out of the way the other day. And Shadow just keeping herself nice and clean there. I can still see Sindile. He hasn't moved very far. He's just tucked away there under the guari bush. But Shadow's giving us a really nice demonstration of the way that leopards clean themselves. Very similar to the way your domestic house cats as pets will clean themselves. Now, unfortunately, I can't reposition at all at the moment. I have a tree in front and another vehicle behind, so we won't be going anywhere anytime soon. So these two leopards are showing very clearly how they've tucked away their kill. First Shadow had it tucked under a tree, and now Sindile's moved it away, tucked under a bush. And David from Michigan would like to know why Shadow hasn't popped it up in a tree, because surely Sindile can climb trees by now. And yes, he definitely would be able to. However, there isn't very much left of that steenbok, and I think it would actually be quite difficult to wedge it up in a tree, and probably not worth the effort at this point. They will finish off this kill fairly soon. It's just the front quarter left. So they'll probably stay with it, finish it off fairly quickly, and then move on out of the area and leave the rest of it to the hyenas. So for something bigger, definitely Shadow should be hoisting it into the trees. And I know that she has a fairly poor reputation for actually doing that. But I'm not sure if that's necessarily deserved. Sometimes it is a little bit difficult, and it might be easier to hide it under a tree somewhere in this area and a little bit closer to where she made the kill. What I am going to try and do now, since I have some space to reverse, is to just shift myself around and see if we can see what Sindile has done with that front half of the steenbok that he had, and just reposition so that we don't have a fairly large tree between us and Shadow. obviously allow Shadow a little bit of personal space and for her to be able to decide where it is she wants to go. And I can still see Sindile. He hasn't moved very far, and I will shift up a little bit to show you guys in a moment. So just a little bit of indigestion there causing those little hiccup burps. And as I mentioned earlier, leopards they will quite fastidiously pluck away to get rid of the hair, but they do occasionally ingest hair which they then cough up as a fur ball. And what I would like to know from you guys, because I honestly have no idea, somehow in my getting to know the various animals of Djuma and the Sabi Sands, I've actually neglected to find out exactly how old Shadow is, or roughly how old Shadow is. So I'm sure that you guys know the answer to that, especially the more regular viewers who've been following WildEarth for a long time. So if you could please just let me know, you can send it through on #SafariLive on Twitter or questions@wildearth.tv. I can't remember exactly, but I do believe she might be the daughter of Karula. I know that some of you guys who are regular viewers or potentially know a little bit about the bush may know that steenbok will actually mate for life. And Susan has a bit of a concerning query about the mate of this particular steenbok, and she's wondering if steenbok are territorial and what will happen to this one's mate if it indeed has one. Will she wait, or will she move on to a different male? And the answer to that is she will definitely move on to a different male. Steenbok are territorial. She'll probably stay within this area, and another young male will probably move in to take his place. So steenbok are not to the point that they will stay loyal to a dead mate. They will move on and continue to mate with a different male. So all is not lost for the female steenbok in this area. And I'm going to shift a little bit so that we can show you what has happened to Sindile. So he is just tucked away over there in front of me, and I am struggling to get a nice position so that we can see him clearly, but he is sort of pushed away in there. Now I just want to make sure I saw which way Shadow went.
She's lying.
Is she lying there?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh yes, okay, cool. So I just don't want to lose Shadow, or at least not be able to follow up on which direction she's moved off in, so that if we can follow up on these guys at a later stage, then we'll know where or which direction to start in. So while I try and find a better position to view Sindile and his half a steenbok prize, I'm going to send you back to Scott, who has some Ellies in the road, and I will see you guys a little bit later.
Well, the elephant was in the road and it's just moved off into this bush. It's a young bull, and I think it's going to provide us with a little bit of entertainment. It looks like he may be thinking about giving us a little mock charge, which is not untypical of young bulls. And now that we've been reversing, we may be giving him a false sense of strength. He may think we're scared of him, and this will probably induce a charge. If we were to drive the car aggressively towards him, it would prevent a charge, or often stop a charge. And I think we've just been having to clear some trees off the road, because it was him who, I think, obliterated one, and he may take his aggression out on this. Please do it. Show us how strong you are. Come on. Oh, you are big and strong. Look at that. And I could tell he had a certain nature about him, a certain way he was moving, that indicated to me that he could potentially provide us with some entertainment, like I said, and he certainly is performing. It looks like he's got quite comfortable now. They don't often feed on these trees, so it's simply a strength display, and I'd be surprised to see him eat any of it. This is a silver cluster leaf. Oh yes, you are a big strong elephant. We can still see you behind there, young boy. It's almost as if he's playing hide and seek with us. Well, just as well we decided to leave the Nkuhuma pride in search of other things while they lie asleep. And like I said, VM and myself had to jump off and move a big tree that I'm sure the same elephant had pushed over and fed on. Come on, keep coming. Show us how big and mean you are. These young bulls can often come charging right up to the vehicle and stop at the last moments, which will be wonderful if he does that. Like I said, they are kind of playful and just messing about with us rather than anything too serious. I've just heard a few more branches breaking to our left, so maybe there are a few young bulls around with him, or maybe if we're lucky it's going to be a big bull. We sadly don't get to see too many big bulls here. Hello, boy. We don't mind if you come running up to us now. Come on. And I believe you're getting some great close-up shots. And aren't they such bizarre animals with these trunks? It looks like he's now deciding to scratch his bottom and back against this tree. And no major action, but we still did get to see that awesome display of his strength breaking down that tree. And like I said, they don't feed on silver cluster leaves, so it's just a bit of fun behavior that we were so fortunate to witness. It's something that I have yet to share with any of you on Safari Live, so I'm glad we got to see something new today. And that, like I said earlier, when we didn't find the lions where we expected to, that is the beauty about being on a live safari. You just don't know what's going to happen next. We had no idea we were going to bump into this elephant when we left the lion, so we took a bit of a gamble, but it's paid off, and we are now going to continue. He's heading off into some thick bush, and we've had such a great sighting of him already that I think it's time for us to move on and for you guys to move back to Jamie and the leopards. See you later.
So guys, welcome back. And while you were gone, we shifted just a little bit further forward just so we could see what Sindile was up to. And despite the fact that he obviously doesn't have the most comfortable feeling stomach at the moment due to all that grass he was eating, he is still bravely pressing on with the rest of that steenbok. And I can still hear Shadow crunching away on what I think is the back end of the rib cage. So she is back in the original position where we first found her. But Sindile's decided that he wants this particular part. And unfortunately, I know that there is a log blocking our view a little bit, but this is the best angle we could find. It is quite a thick block that we found ourselves in, and we are quite surrounded by trees. But we can still see him, and he is beautiful. So the way that the next few hours play out might be very interesting and exciting. I would say that as soon as they've finished as much as they can of this kill, these two are going to move off fairly quickly, just because they don't want to run the risk of having a run-in with something like spotted hyenas that might be attracted by the smell of this carcass. And it is a fairly windy afternoon. There is a nice brisk chilly wind coming through, which will carry the scent all around, so hyenas would be able to smell it from fairly far away. And Shadow is up, and Sindile's just shifted prize a little bit so we can see him a little bit clearly, and it might be a little bit gruesome to watch, but it is also quite a good way to sit and observe the way that they use those incredibly structured teeth to get the best parts of the meat. And since it is a rather brisk, chilly afternoon, I'm going to take this opportunity quickly to add an extra layer, as it is starting to get rather cold on the back of the car here. So interesting to see the way that Sindile's teeth are coming through, and I do just want to have a look with binoculars for a moment, because he definitely appears to have a double canine, at least on the one side, on the bottom left, and on the top left as well. He looks like he's got double sets of canines, and that's quite an interesting lesson for me, because I would have thought that at about 11 months or so of age he would have lost his baby teeth already, but apparently they are sticking around. And usually with most baby animals, puppies and kittens and cubs, I thought that their teeth came out around 6 months of age or so, but he appears to still have, obviously it's a different situation with leopards, and maybe that's just a particularly stubborn milk tooth that hasn't been pushed out by the permanent canine that came through. But it still seems to be roughly the same size. And Shadow is making her way towards us again. Aww, tired out. It's a hard time being a mom raising a teenage son. And then after a hearty meal, it's time for a little bit of a rest. And I would move back to get a slightly better angle, but unfortunately there is another vehicle with us, so I can't really shift around too much. So for the moment we will enjoy the view that we have of Sindile. So a little bit earlier I asked you guys to send me some information about Shadow and her background and how old she is, and we've got lots of answers coming from you all. Linda, Kay, Raisa, I know that there were many people who have responded, so thank you very much guys for that. I really appreciate having that answer. And apparently Shadow was born somewhere around 2007, which puts her at roughly 8 or close to 9 years old, and she was from Karula's first litter of cubs. So, not a very young leopard, quite experienced, although as far as I understand this is the first time that she's had a cub that has reached this age, which is close to 1 year old. And every day that Sindile gets a little bit older, his chances of survival increase. So it is pretty exciting news. So Jenny would like to know what identifying feature is Shadow's, or what really stands out on Shadow. And Jenny, I don't know exactly. We were discussing this, for those of you who might have joined us for the first time. Over the last few days I was discussing a little bit about the different ways that you can identify certain leopards and the spot patterns that you look for. And the really nice, what you're really looking for is the nice dominant spots, or where there are double spots on the features, often around the face, makes it quite easy, but you can do it across the body whenever you see an interesting spot pattern that might catch your eye a little bit. And I haven't actually fully looked at Shadow yet. This is actually the first time I've really had a good chance to see her properly, so I haven't had a chance to really observe what it is I would call her identifying feature. However, I can recognize her almost instantly, which is fascinating, but you just get an overall impression of the animal's size and the way that they carry themselves, their body language, and then their eye color and so on. So I will have a look at pictures, and please feel free to send me any screenshots that you might have for today. It's just so that I can have a look through. And then maybe we can have a little bit of a chat a little bit later, maybe one of the later shows when I have had a chance to look at Shadow and just determine what it is I think would be a key identifying feature for her. Ginny, while I'm still talking to you, and thank you for sending through your questions, she would like to know if Shadow would have to teach Sindile to hoist his kills up into the tree, which I know that she has something of a reputation for avoiding doing. I don't think so. It would be a lesson that he would learn from his mother, but if she doesn't teach him or if she doesn't do it that often, it doesn't mean that he won't ever in his life. So there is that natural instinct within the animal to put kills up into trees out of other predators' reach or out of the reach of any other competition. So I'm sure that even if he'd never seen his mother do it, he would still do it. And I'm sure there have been times where she has put kills up into the tree. So it's a combination of nature versus nurture. There is an instinct there to do this, but there would also be lessons learned from his mother in terms of how he behaves. And he is still nibbling away at whatever's left of that steenbok, which doesn't appear to be very much. And as I said, with regard to putting this particular kill in a tree, there isn't very much left of it, and it probably isn't worth the effort that would be involved tucking it into or finding a fork of the tree that would actually hold this little kill. And there you can see Shadow is taking the opportunity to relax a little bit. So Laura in Pittsburgh was watching a little bit earlier when I was looking for these leopards when I first picked up on the tracks, and she would like to know what it was that I called Shadow over the radio. And the word that I used there that you're looking for is mafuzzy, and it just means female. So I didn't need to specify too much, and I must admit that on that particular occasion my brain was a little bit caught between two different worlds. Generally we do use Shangaan terms for a lot of what we call in over the Game Drive channel, and there are fairly good reasons for that. However, I, in that case, was somewhat confused between what particular radio I was talking over, so I then said the mafuzzy, meaning the female, and then said Sindile's name, which completely cancelled out my use of the Shangaan. So a little bit of a slip on my part, nothing major, but the word I was using was mafuzzy, which actually means woman, but is used in this context to mean a female animal. But very, very observant, and thank you as well for your well wishes. I do appreciate it, and encouragement in this new and exciting job is always very, very welcome. Thank you for that. Really does feel like the weather is closing in on us here. As we've been sitting with these leopards, it's been getting darker and darker, and the wind is swirling a little bit around us. And I do believe we are going to wake up somewhat chilly tomorrow, potentially rather misty like we were the other morning. And I know that my family in Johannesburg are telling me that it is very, very cold there, so I think it must be on its way to us. Of course, we're always a little bit sheltered on this side of the Drakensberg. It doesn't hit us nearly as badly, so it won't be too bad. And I'm sure it will be one of the last cold snaps we have before the summer hits.
Come, I'll make space for you. Just wait on the road as I pull out, then you can come in.
So I was chatting to you guys and answering a little bit of a question about shadows identifying features, and Lynn has apparently responded to say that she draws a spot pattern above one of her eyes. Now I'd have to look a little bit closer just to see what you're talking about, but thank you for that. It is interesting, and I will look out for that kind of spot pattern on her when I get back to camp after the sunset drive. And apparently Shadow does have an identifying neat V notch in her right ear, which I didn't pick up on right now, but I haven't been looking very closely. And she also has two distinct necklaces, so a spot pattern that looks like a necklace along her chest or around her chest. And she has a spot pattern of 4-3. Now, I'm still coming to terms with a different numbering system to the one that I used to use, so I will be having a look into how that works. Now, there, I can see a bit of a notch in the right ear. Of course, she's decided that now is the moment to move off, and something has attracted her attention. I'm not sure what it is. There is another vehicle approaching, but I don't think it is her response to that. And it could be that she's heard a call of that male leopard somewhere in the area. I didn't pick up on anything. Or it could just be that she's caught an unidentified noise somewhere in the bush, and she's just trying to figure out what it is. There is another car approaching, as I mentioned, but I don't think it is that. Just by watching her reactions to other cars, I don't think it's that that's caught her attention. So guys, Shadow is up and about, but I don't think she's going very far. However, apparently the Nkuhumas are on the move with Scott, so I'm going to send you across to them, and I will check in with you guys a little bit later in the sunset safari. So cheers for now, I'll see you later.
Welcome back, everyone. And one lioness, the one with the most amber eyes, has seen something in this direction. We've just driven around to try and work out what it may be. Maybe it's a false alarm, but she did appear to hear or see something, and got up and started heading in this direction. VM said he can't see her tail. We're just going to try and loop ahead. Oh no, I think it was a false alarm, because now she is heading back to the rest of the pride. Also got up, and she obviously felt that the amber-eyed female did actually see something and was looping around to try and get into a better position, a pincer formation or a bullhorn formation. So they try and encompass their prey whenever they can. There we are. So we're just going to have to reposition again, and at least we will get a few glimpses of them moving. Sounds like you're all having a wonderful sighting with Shadow and Sindile. And again, very well done to Jamie for locating them this afternoon. let's just wait here for the time being. The individual that is lying down was the initial one to get up, and she's the one with the most amber eyes. The one on the right is another one of the younger lioness, it looks like. And there are 3 slightly younger lioness within this pride, probably around 3.5 years of age, similar age to Junior. They probably came from the same litter. And then 2 older lioness, so that's 5, Junior number 6, and the 2 smallest lioness, 7 and 8. Now, I haven't had a good visual of the one oldest lioness yet this afternoon, but I did mention this morning that she does look to be pregnant. James says he feels that she also could be, as well as Lex, another very experienced guide who's out here at the moment. So, good prospects, and hopefully the Nkuhuma Pride will grow in numbers in the coming weeks. It'll be great to have some new additions to the Pride. And we certainly do see them more than the Styx lioness, and those are the only other cubs, or lion cubs, that are around. Oh, nice big yawn.
Missed it, well.
Missed it.
Yeah, what's in the back?
Sorry, I don't have a monitor, so I'm just guessing as to what VM is filming. And one lioness did did yawn, but he was elsewhere. Oh, wow. Vim has just pointed out the most incredible blood red sunset. Look at that. And while we're taking a look at this beautiful sunset, we can chat a little bit more about these lions. And Bob would like to know, why do the lioness not get named? He's noticed that the male lions do get named. And I guess you're right and wrong, Bob. The males typically don't get individual names. Their coalition gets a name. So the 2 dominant males in this area are the 2 Matimba males. And yes, we at Safari Live may give them their own names. Ginger and Hairy Belly, I think, is the other one that people call him. The guides will not give them individual names, most often. And it's a pride of lioness that will be named. What is that one lion stalking there, Vim?
I don't know.
There might be something small that this one young lion is trying to stalk. Let's take a closer look. But as I was saying, Bob, it's the collective prides or coalitions that typically get named. And there's various theories and reasons as to why we should or shouldn't name animals. And different guides will have different thoughts on this. For all intents and purposes, there's no huge reason to name each animal, in my opinion, but there are certainly benefits to naming animals, because then we can distinguish between individuals. But quite often, animals are only named from a kind of work perspective, so that you know which pride of lion you're tracking or which pride of lion is in which area. And the same goes for the leopard. They do get individual names because they are solitary animals. And I guess a lot just depends on the area you may be going on safari and the preferences that guides may have in that area for naming animals. This is the amber-eyed female. She's got distinctively more ambery orange colored eyes than the rest of the pride members. And one thing I've noticed about her specifically is that she does take an interest to the vehicles and the turning tires as we're driving around following them. The other lion don't pay as much as attention. She kind of gets a very interesting look, and you feel like she may pounce on you at any moment, which is a bit unnerving. And I know James has had a close encounter with her doing just that, showing quite a lot of inquisitive nature towards the vehicles. I wonder what these lions are stalking. There must be something up ahead there. And we've just got a comment through from Eric regarding the naming of lions, and he thinks we should name this female Amber Eyes. And Eric, I've got no problem with that. I think for our product and what we're doing here, it is useful to name the animals and get to know them individually, because we do follow them for prolonged periods of time, and both you and us out here, you the viewers and us out here in the field, do get to know them more intimately than most people would who only come out here for a few days at a time. So it's certainly more applicable to us than it is to the other safari goers who may be coming here for short periods. So they're getting up and moving around slowly by slowly. I'm hoping it won't take too much longer for one of the older lioness to rally the pride and get them moving. But there's no guarantee that they will get up at any moment, just like there was no guarantee that we would find them where we left them this morning. But at this stage of the evening, I think it certainly is worth continuing to invest time with them. Even if they don't get active, there is that chance that something could stumble upon them and we could see some action. And all this grooming behavior and yawning is very typical behavior of lions before they head out on the hunt. So the telltale signs for active lions are coming through here. Well, it's a miracle that that sun managed to punch through the clouds. There's a thick bank of clouds to the west, and I was so surprised when VM pointed it out to me, because it's the last thing I expected to see. I would like to try and reposition, but sadly all of the line are kind of spread out in a way that it's not going to make it too easy for us, so we'd rather just wait here for now. Well, like I said, we can't reposition the vehicle now, so difficult to see the rest of the pride. But a lot of you will know Junior, the young male. And Maggie in Vancouver would like to know whether I think he looks like the Birmingham males and if there's any chance that they could in some way be related. I certainly do think he looks similar to the Birmingham boys. To me, all lion look fairly similar. But that's just me, and again, I must stress that you guys get such great views of them that you can notice finer intricacies and markings on them than we actually can here. Probably that and a combination of my rusty memory bank, Makes it difficult for me to keep track of who's who. But he certainly does look a lot like them. I don't think he is from the same lineage, though. They hail from Mala Mala, which is to the south and to the east of us, and I don't think the Matimba males stretch that far. I think there is another coalition of male lions in that area that would have in all likelihood fathered the Birmingham boys. But who knows, there could be some distant relation. But like I said, for me, a lot of young male lions that are of a similar age will all look very similar to one another. Even, I guess, lioness from various prides can all look quite similar. Well, earlier I was discussing the fact that we think one of the lioness in this pride is pregnant, and she will hopefully be giving birth in a few more weeks from now, not too much longer. If we can see that she's pregnant, it's a good sign that she will be giving birth fairly soon. But how soon exactly, I'm not too sure. But Lynn is interested to know it would increase his chances of being able to mate with any lioness within this pride. And it's not uncommon for young males to be introduced to cubs that are born into prides. It's usually older, more sexually mature males that are aware that by killing cubs they release the lioness of their responsibility of raising them, and therefore they can get their genes into the system. Another important thing to remember is that this lioness will in all likelihood distance herself from the rest of the pride and give birth alone in a secret location, and she will only rejoin with the pride after about a week or two. She may leave the cubs and rejoin the pride without them for feeding and an easy meal that the pride may have made, but she will in all likelihood give birth elsewhere, away from the rest of them, and that does eliminate any problems early on. Over inquisitive lions with very, very young cubs, I guess, could end badly. I'm just going to reposition the vehicle quickly. And while we get into a new position, we can continue taking some of your questions. The next one is from Lisa, and she would like to know if the Matimba males would draw blood when chasing away Junior. And yes, they certainly would. If he's too stubborn and does not listen to their warnings, they will certainly draw blood, because there's only so much they will tolerate, and if he does keep persisting on staying, their intensity of aggression will increase to a point where they could very well draw blood. Also, I guess something that would heighten their aggression would be if some of these lioness came into season and that excited him, excited them, they would certainly be a lot more aggressive towards him. Oh. Still a bit early for the lights. You doing okay there, VM?
Yeah, bro.
Well, aren't these a comfortable pride of lion? Not a worry in the world at the moment. I just need to call somebody into the sighting. Quickly give me a moment, please. Go ahead for Scott. Affirmative. If you come along Battalier, we are about 200 meters from Drakensberg Junction, and I will call you in from there. Copy. Well, there's another vehicle joining us at the moment that you may hear driving through the bushes, and a third one is also approaching from a long way out, so we've got some visitors on the way, which is great to be sharing this wonderful sighting. And I guess it's our turn to provide for everyone today. Jamie found the leopard with the kill, and we found the lion, so hopefully we're gaining some credit for future sightings with all the other guides. And it certainly does ebb and flow, and it's not always us to find the animals, that I can assure you. Okay, well, earlier on I said that the lioness would probably keep her cubs away for a week or two before bringing them back to the pride. But Kathleen's been doing some research, and that's great that people are researching things, and that way we can combine what we know together. And she says that the papers that she read said a lioness will only bring cubs back to the pride from 6 to 8 weeks of age. So that's interesting. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but it's not necessarily always the case. And in my time I've noticed that that's not necessarily that long. It could very well be that with an individual pride. But I did also mention this morning there are occasions where a lioness will give birth with other pride members right by her side. So it's not a hard and fast rule, as is a lot of the things you read about wild animals, in regardless of how factual or how good you think the research you're reading is, or the book you've got that you're learning from, there's often changes to what happens in the textbooks. It's a saying that is often said that the humans write the textbooks and the animals go off and prove otherwise almost all the time. So it's no guarantee that that is the hard and fast rule. And I guess it could be area related to that specific area where the research was done, or that specific pride of lion. And it is another important, which leads to another important fact, Kathleen, and that is the same species, be it lion, leopard, spotted hyena, or any of the animals you see in Africa, some of them are very widely spread through different parts of Africa. And what you'll find is the behavior of the same species will differ very, very greatly depending on the area that they are moving in. Nice big yawn there again. Still good signs, or more good signs, of these lions waking up, even though it is only one of them. an example of how animals will behave differently in different areas of Africa and how relationships may differ between certain animals. It is one that I've used before, but it's a great example and one that I feel people should know about. In certain areas in Africa, they've done research and found that lions will steal more from hyena than hyena from lion. And isn't that an interesting fact, that the lions have learned to actually steal from very successful clans of hyena that hunt? A lot of you may be aware of hyena to be strictly scavengers. That's not the case. It's merely bad publicity that they've been getting over the years, and they can be formidable hunters when they need to be. But like most predators, if there's an easy opportunity to steal a meal, they'll do it. We saw it this morning with the African fish eagle trying to steal from the saddle-billed stork, and it's the same with all the predators. So that's one example of how interrelationships between different species can differ. And then if we just take hyena specifically, in this area of Africa, or specifically South Africa in the Sabi Sands, we often find them actually hunting specifically alone or foraging alone, not in clans. They are clan-based, but they move out on their own when searching for food, whereas in other areas of Africa they'll move as their clan, hunting together. So there are a lot of varieties and variations within the same species of animals depending on where you are. Now, I've mentioned that we think one of the lioness could be pregnant in this pride, and Joyce is interested to know, is it not common for lioness to all give birth at the same time so that all of the cubs are within that same bracket? And no, it's certainly not uncommon for lioness to come into season at similar stages and therefore get an influx of tiny cubs of all very similar ages at the same time. And to be honest, I'm almost quite surprised that they haven't actually done that in this case. So again, it's not a hard and fast rule, but it's certainly not uncommon for multiple lioness to come into season simultaneously and then all give birth at a very similar stage. I'm guessing that's what could happen with the 3 younger lioness within this pride, and because they're all of the same age, they're all going to probably come into season at a very similar stage, and then we could expect a great influx of cubs to the pride. Well, we've got a steady stream of questions coming through today, and thanks so much for sending them all through. This is from one of our younger viewers, Cameron, who's aged 5 years old, and it's so good to have you with us, Cameron. I hope you're enjoying watching these lions with us. Cameron would like to know, when the lioness does give birth to these little cubs, will they be able to play with other cubs, and how will they keep busy? Well, they'll have their brothers and sisters to play with, Cameron, but they won't be able to go and play with the cubs from another pride. Sadly, the parents of the cubs will fight with one another, so the cubs don't get to play, but they will be able to play with even the bigger members of this pride, even if it is just chasing their tails and running after, biting onto their ears. So they certainly will have lots of playmates, but a lot of the time it will be their bigger cousins and brothers from previous litters. Another big yawn there. Well, we've got a question from now a new name that I've yet to heard called Umang. And it's good to have you with us, and thanks for sending the first question that I've answered from you through. Umang would like to know what would happen and what should we do when we come across predators whilst on foot to prevent them charging us. Now, it does depend, but what can happen is that a lot of the time the predators will actually run away from us, and the bigger threats can often be buffalo and elephants and hippo. So most of the time the lion and leopards in this areas will give space to us, and that's what happened this afternoon. I was walking through quite thick bush very slowly, and then I just saw the tail of one lioness moving away from me, and then instead of putting further pressure on the lion, I retracted straight back on my same pathway so that they felt safe again, back to the vehicle, and then returned with the vehicle. If you were to continually pressure animals on foot, they will turn and charge, and there will be scenarios, even if you are being as careful as possible. Let's say, for example, it's very windy, I'm walking into the wind, the lion cannot smell me, they cannot hear my footsteps, and then all of a sudden in thick bush I startle them. In that scenario, they may feel that because I'm so close to them, running away would not be an option, and they would feel the need to attack. So there are those circumstances where there's kind of nothing you can do until they start charging you, but it's important then, once they do start charging you, that you've got your ducks in a row and you know what to do next, and that is to certainly not run. It's to stand your ground, shout, scream, make yourself look as big and scary as possible, pull faces at them, and hope that they don't jump onto you. But the best thing to do is to stand your ground if and when they do charge. With lion, it's best to maintain eye contact with them, whereas with leopard, it's best to stand your ground but not look directly at them. Easier said than done, but that's what you are supposed to do. Okay, well, we're going to send you back to Jamie, who is now back with Shadow and Sindile, and I'm sure a lot of you are interested to see how they're getting along with their steenbok kill. So am I, so enjoy, and I look forward to hearing how it goes.
So guys, welcome back, and as you can see, Sindile is still finishing off what's left of that steenbok, and he has pretty much devoured all of it, so he will be nice and full for the next few days to come. But not a huge kill, so not very much meat. For those of you who might just be joining us, it was a steenbok kill, so it wasn't much meat. It's just a tiny little antelope that he shared with his mother Shadow. And Shadow is still in the area. She's lying off to the right of us, but we'll stay with Sindile for now, just because we do have such a nice light on him at the moment. So an exciting afternoon for me. My first leopards found on foot on the Savi sands. I have found leopards before in the past, but never here, and it was quite a nice change for me to see how relaxed these two were when I first found them, even though I was very, very close before I noticed him. is interesting to think about, because when I approached, I was on the other side of the termite mound, so opposite to where Sindile was, opposite to where Shadow was, with the kill tucked away under the tree. And we've just lost our light source, but fear not, I will provide us with some in a moment. I'll just wait for the other vehicle to move out of the way. I didn't want to have my lights on when they were opposite us, just because it was blinding them, or blinding the guests on the other vehicle. So there we go. We do have a little bit of light. And there we go. It is nicely illuminated. So I think, as I was just saying earlier, if I had approached from a slightly different angle, and originally my idea was to climb that particular termite mound and to see if I could see anything from the top of it. I was also just checking all of the termite mounds in the area, because I know that they like to hang around them as vantage points. But I do think Shadow might have reacted a little bit differently if I'd approached from that side and had maybe threatened her kill. I might have got a little bit of a growl, a bit of a rev from her, just in defense of her kills. Animals with food are always a little bit more aggressive than animals lying flat. So these guys have just had a fairly small meal. I just want to potentially redirect myself to see if we can see. Something's alerted both of them, because Shadow is also sat up. She might have heard something. Hold on, Sindile is not quite finished with his kill. And he's just moving off. So I was chatting a little bit about how this is a small meal for these guys, and Jamie on Twitter would like to ask the Jamie on the vehicle. Hi Jamie, it's nice to have a question from somebody with the same name, and Jamie would like to know how long it will take a lion or a leopard to digest a meal. And they do have very, very fast metabolisms, so it will only take them maybe 2 or 3 days to go from those very, very round bellies that you see with lions and leopards after they've gorged themselves on a meal, to being thin and sleek looking once again. So since he's disappeared off into there, well, we can still see him slightly through the branches. I cannot move any further forward in order to get a better view. But Shadow is sitting up beautifully on that termite mound, so I might move to her for a little bit, and then we can reposition to Sindile. But yes, they digest very, very rapidly, so even though they look incredibly full, it will only take them maybe 3 days before they really need to start eating again. So I'm not sure what's got Shadow's attention. She has, over the hours that we've been with her, whenever she does look up and look alert, it is in the same direction. So it could be, potentially, that there are hyena either calling or she's catching the scent of, and it is entirely possible that they will catch wind of this kill. As I mentioned earlier, it is fairly windy, or it has been fairly windy this afternoon. go. She was sitting up nicely, but she has relaxed. But there is a distinct possibility that hyenas will sniff out this kill sometime tonight. And just to give you guys a rough idea of where we are maybe 2, maybe even less kilometers from the hyena den that is currently active. And I have seen a great deal of hyena activity in this area. So I'm just looking, now that I've got a good view of Shadow, I am just looking to see that notch on the right ear that was mentioned in terms of her identifying features. And I can see a little bit of a nick, sort of just on the outside of the ear, quite close to the top. And that, I believe, will be the notch that was mentioned. And I'm looking for the sort of necklace spot pattern that was also talked about, but it's hard to see with her head in this position. So whenever she does look up, she is still looking sort of in this direction, but she doesn't look too stressed. So whatever was catching her attention was more just her being on alert and making sure that she stays, that her and Sindile stay safe while they are in this vulnerable position with this kill. And what a beautiful setting this is. The clouds are rolling in, and it is starting to there is a definite nip in the air. And those clouds do look very heavy. It almost looks like we might be in for some rain at some point. The clouds look very dense and very full. And it would be unusual, but definitely not impossible. Usually about once in a dry season we might get a very small shower. So potentially not too much rain, but I still think it might happen sometime this evening. And the wind is definitely picking up as I'm speaking. So I'm almost certain that we are just about to be hit by this cold front. If I didn't know better, it is an unusual time of year, but the feeling that I'm getting at the moment is almost like there is a thunderstorm on the way. So you get this feeling in summer, which is our rainy season, of electrical build-up in the air. And it is a wonderful moment when that heat breaks and you get a proper summer African thunderstorm. So she's also coughing and sneezing a little bit in the same way that Sindile was earlier. However, we have been sitting with these guys for a couple of hours now, and I do feel as though it is time to leave them. And since we are almost at the end of this sunset safari, I would like to take this opportunity to say goodbye to you all. So it has been a really exciting afternoon for me. Nice to finally find and track some leopards by myself on the Sabi Sands in Nkuhuma. So a very exciting moment, and even better to find 2 leopards on a kill. Here, and a big thank you to Andrew for all of his stunning camera work this afternoon, and to Nikki and Kirsty in FC, and of course to Scott and to Jean-Andre on the other vehicle. Thank you very much for all of your hard work. Oh, sorry, it was VM with Scott this afternoon, so thank you to them. And I'm sure that you are keen to hear about an update from them, so I will see you again tomorrow morning for the sunrise safari, where we will start exactly where we leave off this evening and see what these 2 have been up to during the night and what has happened with this kill. So until tomorrow, guys, have a fantastic day or a fantastic night wherever you are in the world, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Welcome back, everyone, and great news, the Nkuhuma Pride are on the move, and we've just looped ahead of them. Rather than following their tails through this thick bush, I thought it would be best for us to get into position ahead of them and wait for them to come to us. And that way we'll get some great final views of them as they hopefully get onto this road and then walk down it towards us. I'm guessing that's what they're going to do, and it's just important for us to keep staying in front of them until they get onto this road. So we need to just be a little bit patient. I'm sure it won't be too long before they get you, unless they go to sleep again, but it's a risk I am willing to take. It is very thick here, so hard to forecast the exact movements, but I'm guessing they're going to pop out somewhere around about here shortly. I'm told you we're having some wonderful visuals of both Shadow and Sindile feeding on that steenbok kill. It's interesting because I've noticed that she does tend to focus on almost hunting steenbok. All of the times I've seen her hunting, she's been moving through areas where she is actively seeking out steenbok. So maybe you could say she's becoming a specialist of sorts. And I've decided to come in here just because we don't have too much time to take any chances, and they could well have laid down again.
At 11 o'clock.
Okay, VM's got them there. Come on, lions. What are you doing? They're probably all going to be in a heap on the ground when we get there.
We get 1 or 2 o'clock.
Here they are. Fast asleep again. Not quite fast asleep, but asleep. Lying down at least. But we will be able to get you 1 or 2 more visuals of them. At least there's 1 of them. I'm guessing the rest of the pride are still behind her. They got up instantaneously, and it was awesome to see, and always something that makes me wonder, what is it exactly that gets them from a flat out sleep to marching off with no apparent reason or cause, and then within a minute they're lying down again. Again, I guess a lot of things out here cannot be very well explained, and the behavior of these animals is one of those things that always keeps us guessing. Well, there's just a minute or so left on this sunrise safari. It's been action-packed with a lot of big cat sightings, so fortunate that that worked out the way it did, because when we started off this afternoon, Jamie had no idea that she was going to find those leopard. I was confident we were going to find the lion where we left them sleeping. As soon as they moved, I became a lot less confident that we'd find them, but we got lucky, and it's been wonderful sharing it with all of you. Thanks so much for joining and sending all your questions through. It was great answering some questions from some new names today, and if you have been watching for a while and haven't sent through any questions or comments, please do so. Anyway, from myself, Scott, a big thanks to VM on camera, and to Nikki and Kirsty in the final control, and again a big well done to Jamie for finding that awesome leopard sighting. Until tomorrow for the sunrise safari, where James and Jamie will be out, I'm signing out, and we'll show you one more view of this lion. It looks like she's heading back to her pride. Maybe not. I think she would have already disappeared behind the bush unless VM managed to sneak her in. We will see you in the morning.